Do INFJs have selective hearing? Why do we tend to remember certain kinds of information and forget others? Stick around for today's show to find out. I received this question via email a little while ago, and it really got me thinking. To answer it, we need to take a look at the preferences and the functions in Myers-Briggs theory. As a quick reminder, the preferences include introversion and extroversion, sensing and intuition, thinking and feeling, and judging and perceiving. Of the 8 preferences that I just listed, 4 are functions, or are referred to as functions, and 2 of those functions are used for information gathering, whereas the other 2 are used for decision making. So with the information gathering functions, they are attuned to different kinds of things. For instance, intuition tends to look for meaning beyond what is immediately picked up in the environment, beyond what is just obviously there, whereas sensing is concerned with what is and what can practically be pulled out. For instance, what you can taste, touch, see, smell, and hear. It's more reality-based. Not that intuition is detached from reality. And intuition, again, is concerned with meaning, with implications for the future, with possibilities. So those are a simple dichotomy and a way to tell the difference between the two. And I bring this up because it really gives you an insight or some insight into why INFJs pay attention to certain kinds of information while other types of people pay attention to other kinds of information. So if we take a deeper dive and take a look at the functions, there are actually 4 functions. And when I say functions this time, I'm talking about cognitive functions. So we could actually add that attitude or introversion or extroversion to the information gathering functions, and we get 2 additional ones. So to list them really quickly, there are the intuitive functions, which are information gathering functions, extroverted intuition and introverted intuition. And then we have the sensing functions, cognitive functions, introverted sensing and extroverted sensing. When you heard introverted intuition, hopefully your ears perked up. It's something that I talk about a lot and that you probably spend a lot of time researching. It's the dominant function or the most important mindset for INFJs, the one that we're most adept at using. And introverted intuition and extroverted intuition are very good at remembering details when they're related to a pattern or to a system. To give you a quick illustration, the other day I was explaining how a computer works to my mother-in-law, and she's a really smart person. She's a nurse and has helped a ton of people, really loves to look at the stars, loves to dive into geology, and has a lot of other health interests. And she knows a lot about personality types. She's an INFJ as well, but didn't understand how a computer worked, at least how the files were organized, because no one had ever explained it to her. Or when they had explained it to her, they did it bit by bit, just explaining little details. She needed the big picture to get it. So I tried to explain it the way you would explain a filing cabinet. I gave her an advanced organizer and the big picture, and tried to explain how my computer on a PC at least is kind of like a file system, and the filing cabinet is the whole thing when you're there, but then you can dive into particular drawers, and then within drawers there are hanging file folders, and then there are the manila folders within that, and then you've got papers inside, and that there are all these nested folders. So if you can understand that there's a place where all the drawers are that you can go back to, and how these things nest within each other, you kind of get a better system of how everything works. And when she got the big picture, it made more sense. No one had ever really explained it that way to her before, and she was frustrated because of that, because when she saw the big picture, it all made sense. That's totally the way I learned. I remember getting to college and just having a lot more click because things were explained in the big picture approach rather than just details along the way. Not that my other teachers did that, because I've had some very good ones along the way, but that tends to be the way intuitives remember information. Sensors, by contrast, are very good at specifics, and they tend to be great at remembering particular facts and details, even if they're not related to a pattern. Their minds just grasp that information. And I'd say particularly introverted sensing types have a very quick mind for recalling specific details. That's not to say extroverted sensors aren't good at, they're just tuned into different types of information, maybe what they can pick up from the world around them. And again, you'll find that a lot of introverted sensing types tend to gravitate toward history, whereas extroverted sensors tend to enjoy the here and now and the present moment, but that's just a general rule because you'll find people in all camps. And you'll even find intuitives who really enjoy history, or INFJs at that, because they like the big picture approach or the way it explains things and how they've come to be. Another difference is that intuitives tend to look for meaning below what they can observe. So here's another key element. So with sensors, they love what they can perceive about the world around them. Here's an illustration for you. When I first started out teaching in the elementary school, I was feeling pretty frustrated because a lot of my colleagues were great at just picking up which kids were well cared for, which ones had their hair taken care of, who was well dressed, whose shoes were tied, who had their books together. And they could remember all this stuff because they're, first of all, feelers. They're tuned into people, but then they were paying attention to the caretaking element of people and whether or not Susie had her lunch and Billy had gotten enough sleep and whether his eyes looked tired or not. I just wasn't even paying attention to that. I was thinking about other things. I was tuned into their emotions and how they were feeling and maybe how their decisions were going to play out in the future. And it's not like I wasn't picking it up. It's just that I was putting it together and processing it in a different way. So they remember all these particular details that they could pick up in the environment, specific times that kids came in and left, what they were wearing again, what things smelled like in the room. And I was just oblivious. Oftentimes, I don't even smell things until I think or am asked, what's that smell like? I just didn't even think about it. I was thinking about other things. There's a great story in a chapter I just finished in a book by Otto Kroger, I believe. And he was saying that with an intuitive wife and a sensing husband who were having a party, the sensing wife moved some things around and the intuitive was coming through the room and he tripped over the coffee table. And the wife was just, she thought it was hilarious that he had tripped and not even seen the coffee table. And he was frustrated. And she said, how could you not see it? It's right there in front of you. But he wasn't paying attention. He wasn't looking for the coffee table. He didn't need a magazine off of it. Didn't need to put his glass down. So he just wasn't paying attention to it. And I think that happens a lot to intuitives who have minds that are not preoccupied with what they can observe in the world around them, but with other things. So they're just looking for different kinds of information. Here's another quick illustration for you. My wife is an ISTJ, and we often are noticing different things. She's seeing things in the world around her, whereas I'm caught up in thoughts in my head. So we're driving down the road, it's the middle of winter, and she's paying attention to which roofs are the most efficient. And she could tell because certain roofs have snow covering the entire top, whereas others have snow in most spots, but then they'll have little brown spots or black spots rather, where the heat can escape because of poor insulation and the snow isn't consistent throughout. So she's just looking for houses and which ones are insulated poorly and might not be set up the best because I guess she's concerned about that sort of thing and about saving money and energy and about a well-built house. Whereas I'm just totally enwrapped in thoughts in my head. I've shared before how oftentimes I'll be driving down the road thinking about something and I'll miss my turn on the interstate. I don't know if you can relate to that or not. I mean, even in my own neighborhood, I can be thinking about something and drive the same way every day and then miss my turn because I'm so caught up in my thoughts. And it's not like you or I are dumb or stupid. It's just that we're thinking about different things and paying different attention to different information. So when my wife asked me, did I notice the roofs? I can honestly reply, I had no idea because I wasn't even paying attention to that. And she, in turn, when I ask her what she thinks about some deep idea or whatever, she has a limited attention span for talking about that sort of thing because it didn't even occur to her that that was something that she should consider. So just completely different interests because we're tuned in to different kinds of information. It all boils down to this. There's 4 different types of cognitive functions when it comes to information gathering. And each of the 16 personality types has a different one. So depending on what type of information gathering cognitive function you have, you're going to A, pay attention to particular types of information, and B, remember certain types of information. Now, it's helpful to know that based on surveys done by people who work with the Myers-Briggs type indicator and Myers-Briggs theory, that the majority of Americans, at least, at one time were said to have been sensors. A lot of them tested as sensors. In fact, 70%, whereas about 30% then were intuitive. So the majority were sensors and were paying attention to the concrete world and specific things about the here and now world that they could remember. And then the intuitives, in turn, we're looking for meaning, we're looking for patterns, we're going deeper, we're thinking about the future implications of things. I share this just to say that if you think, or someone thinks that you're a poor listener, there's a good chance at least that there's just a difference in preference for information. That other person might be looking for concrete specifics and details, and that might be what he or she is sharing with you most of the time. And then you, as someone who's looking for insights and for patterns and for possibilities, may have different interests and maybe paying attention to different information. So you could be having conversation with each other and missing each other to some extent. So it's not like that other person is a poor listener or you're a poor listener. It's just that you're talking around each other or missing the kinds of information that the other person wants. So to recap, we tend to be good at collecting and remembering particular types of information. And as a result, we enjoy it. And when we enjoy something, we spend more time doing it, which leads to us being better at it. And this is an observation that David Kiersey made in his book, Please Understand Me, and Please Understand Me Too. And I think it's a really adept observation. It's a cycle. It's almost like self-fulfilling prophecy. You expect something to happen, you behave in ways that are consistent with what you expect, and then you get the result that you expected. And it's in a similar light, that sort of cycle or pattern. So just be aware of the different types of sensing and collecting information and perceiving and intuition. All these things can be helpful to you if you're maybe having a disconnect between two people. And don't feel stupid if the type of information you're collecting is different than the majority, because what you are perceiving or what you are observing is still important, even though it's not the majority. And in fact, I'd argue because not as many people are doing it, you have things to share that the group needs even more. Not that other information, if it's sensing and facts and details and specifics, isn't important information, because it definitely is. So just keep this in mind as you're moving ahead. The golden rule is not to compare yourself with others, because we're all different and all gifts are valuable and needed. I hope that you found this video helpful and this information helpful. If you'd like to learn more about your personality type, or you know someone who would, then I'd love to give you or that person a free copy of my book, The INFJ Personality Guide. In the book, you'll learn about the mindsets and motivations that cause you to do what you do as an INFJ, as well as some common INFJ challenges and solutions to those challenges. Ultimately, I want you to know that you're not messed up or broken, but just different, and the world needs the gifts that you have to offer. You can get the book one of two ways. First, consider texting the letters INFJ to the number 444999. Or you can visit ispeakpeople.com/INFJ-personality-guide. You can find both that number and the link in the description below this video. Well, thanks again for watching. It was a pleasure spending time with you. If this is your first time checking out a video, thank you. I really encourage you to hit that subscribe button and to come back. There will be videos coming out on a regular basis, and I look forward to seeing you on the next show.